In tonight's Top Gear, Tiff wrestles with some British brawn in the form of the AC Ace. Chris Goffey finds a self-made man with a self-made car. And Tony Mason takes the slow road to Didcot.
You're about to see one of the most important cars of the decade. Every now and again, a manufacturer comes up with a car that is so beautiful, so breathtaking, so close to perfection that you must have one and you don't care how much it costs.
But if you must know, it's £22,000, which makes it the biggest steal since the Italian job. That's before you've driven it.
Behold the new Alfa Romeo Spider. Certainly a flamboyant styling statement, but one which also works. If you ever needed proof that when the Italians put their mind to it, they can build a world-beating car, then this is it. There's a GTV version which gives you 2 small seats and saves you £2,000. The name is just as evocative, but otherwise they're identical. But it's the ragtop that's going to hog all the limelight. Both are 2 litre with only 150 brake horsepower and arrive next spring. But in a year or two, a decent V6 might come our way.
No, I'm not going any further until you've seen this interior. Look at this pistol grip gear shifter and check out these clocks, hooded and angled in towards the driver, just like in a late 60s Lamborghini. There's a commendable absence of wood and the discreet yet welcome return of chrome. Oh, one other thing. Back there, instead of a couple of pointless seats, Alfa have added a rather handy shelf and a small luggage compartment. Which is a good thing because the boot is aptly named, having roughly the same space inside as a Dr. Martin.
The only hole you'll find in the Spider is where the roof should go. It's great in the lanes, cruises comfortably, and there's always enough grunt if you want it. And you know what? You always do.
There are many things about this car for which we should rightfully give thanks. That we get it at all. That when we do get it, this will be on that side. And that although we don't get the 3 litre V6, we do get one of the greatest engines of all time. The 2 litre 4-cylinder. It loves to rev, it pulls hard, and it sounds glorious. This car exudes glamour, like an old-time movie star, like Sophia Loren or Marcello Mastroianni, which is probably a completely wrong mispronunciation of the guy's name. What was he called, that fella? In Italy, Paolo Cantrella is only slightly less important than the Pope. He is the head of Fiat Auto, which means that he's the boss at Fiat, Lancia and Alfa Romeo. And when he drove the original development version of this car, he thought that the handling was good, but it had to be great, which is why the Spider now has an independent rear subframe and multi-link suspension. It works beautifully, and so it should, because this is an Alfa Romeo. Now, recent Alfas have used whatever was available from the Fiat's parts bin and were compromised as a result. With the Spider, Alfa Romeo are back on the right track.
Both are to die for, or deserving of a second mortgage at the very least. Join the queue now and sign up before they're all pre-sold. But if I was signing the cheque, then it would have to be the rigid and rakish GTV.
Why? Well, because I own the original, and it was a great car. Because I actually have 2 children small enough to fit on those rear seats. And because where I live, a convertible is about as practical as a cast-iron codpiece. But whether it's the Spider or the GTV, the cute little Fiat Barchetta or the gorgeous coupe, surely the only cars worth being seen in these days are Italian cars.
If you're one of the millions of motorists with a 3-year-old car on a K-plate, you'll know that it's time for that first MOT. No worries, you say. It'll pass first time. Well, don't be so sure, because come January there's going to be a new part to the test. A check on catalytic converters, or CATs, to you and me.
Now, I promise I'm not going to go all technical on you, but listen up, because this is important. Right. This is a catalytic converter, that piece of exhaust pipery which helps cut down your emissions. So why should you worry about this? Well, I'll tell you why. Because, according to one of the biggest leasing companies in the UK, Cowies, there is alarming evidence to suggest that these CATs, far from lasting the full lifetime of the car, are actually failing at an alarmingly early age, which, given that they cost to replace about the same amount it would cost to rebuild your engine, between 400 and 2,000 quid, this is bad news all round.
In the beginning, when catalytic converters were first introduced, we were assured that these components would last for the lifetime of the vehicle. Our early indications were that there were a few failures, so we started to monitor it with some vigour. We looked at 5,000 company cars, and we found out of those 5% had a complete CAT failure.
So which are the cars with the CATs that are causing concern? Well, we have got hold of Cowies' confidential report, and I can assure you it makes fascinating reading. For instance, 2 of the UK's best sellers, the Escort and Orion 1.4, come up with a 10% failure rate. The Escort 1.8 is worse, with a 22% failure rate, and that fleet stalwart, the Mondeo 2-litre, comes up with a worrying 23% failure rate.
So what have Ford got to say? Well, they told us that all Ford CATs are designed to last a minimum of 5 years or 50,000 miles. But they do recognise that some catalyst units have failed, and a team comprising experts from Ford and our suppliers has already taken action to investigate these concerns and implement improvements. But just why did they fail in the first place?
CATs are quite fragile. Things that can make a CAT fail, for example, are if you have an oil in the engine that is not recommended by the manufacturer, if an engine management system fails and the engine has a misfire, or the spark plugs fail and the engine misfires, driving on the motorway at very high speed, using a cheaper petrol with lower octane rating, that makes the CAT hotter, and that makes it fail through heat erosion.
What we've got here then is an expensive component that could need replacing any number of times in the life of a vehicle at a potential cost of thousands. So if your car was made after '93, it's time you started looking after your CAT. Slow down over the bumpy stuff. CATs don't like coming to blows with sleeping policemen and can shatter if the shock is violent.
It just depends how close the ground.
If your car won't start in the morning, get out the jump leads. Don't give it a bump start, you'll damage your CAT. Any kind of prang can reduce the life expectancy of your CAT. Insurance companies will replace them, but forget to get your CAT checked after a crash, and it'll be you who forks out for a new one. And finally, avoid floodwater and fords, as cold water on a hot CAT can cause your converter to crack.
So the bottom line is then that catalytic converters, far from being the rugged, fit-them-and-forget-them components that the manufacturers claim, are actually quite fragile. And perhaps more worryingly, don't think that you'll be able to skip down to your local exhaust centre and get one of these bolted on a Saturday afternoon. You can't, because at the moment they are a main agent only part with a main agent price tag.
Look after your car, moderate your driving habits, and you can make your catalytic converter last longer and protect the environment more efficiently. But ignore it, as most people do, and come January with the new gas analyzer tests on the MOT, you could be looking at a groan-inspiring bill for a new one. Not to mention a possible fine from the police for pumping out too much hydrocarbon and carbon monoxide. Our car passed. The big question is, will yours?
But one final point. If you're in the fortunate position to be about to buy a K, L, M, or even N-Reg second-hand car, just pause for thought for a moment, because there is another part of it you'll need to check over. Yes, that's right, the cat. So before you hand over any money on that deal, simply whip your prospective purchase down to the nearest MOT station that has the appropriate testing gear, and for the price of an MOT, 20 odd quid, they will tell you whether your catalytic converter is working or not. And remember, if you don't, you could be storing up the sort of future problems that'll be measured not in hundreds of pounds, but in thousands. You have been warned.
A Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow, the epitome of British engineering, and some would say the best car in the world. But we've met a man who doesn't agree and wanted something very different. And this is it, the Buckingham, the creation of a rich man's fevered imagination.
I bought a Silver Shadow Mark II, and it was delivered while I was on holiday. And when I came back, there was a great scab on the roof. And I complained to Rolls-Royce. They sent a fellow along very quickly, and he found 23 faults with the bodywork. I had it for 2 years, and Rolls-Royce finally gave me the money back. So then I didn't know what to buy. So I looked at various other cars and couldn't find anything, so I said, well, I'll build one.
How long did the project take you, all in all?
3 years. 6 months on my own, when I laid down the chassis and the components. Then I got to the stage where I couldn't progress anymore. So I brought in a fellow to do all the welding, and then I brought somebody else in, but they were only coming part-time, and it wasn't going fast enough. So I then employed the fellows full-time. The upholsterer, the panel beater, the welder, and the electronics man were all ex-Aston Martin.
And once the skeleton had been panelled, trimmed and wired, the full glory of the Buckingham could emerge. What's underneath this vast bonnet?
V12 Jaguar.
And Jaguar automatic gearbox?
General Motors, GM400 gearbox.
General Motors. And inside, I mean, it's actually beautifully trimmed.
I bought an old Aston Martin seat and made our seat a little bit bigger.
And so what is the bodywork made of?
Aluminium.
It's all aluminium?
Yeah, it's got a stainless steel box section structure that's fixed to the main chassis, and then it's all clad in aluminium, and the wings are all double skinned.
And these rear doors are rather special.
Yeah,
Show us.
They're gull wing. Open that way.
Why did you go for a gull wing?
To get my mother-in-law in.
And at the back, the traditional sort of 30s style trunk.
Well, yeah, it needed a boot. A car this size needed a boot.
And are you satisfied with it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. There's little things I would have changed, you know, doing it again.
Yeah.
But not very much.
It's got to be perfect. It's got to be perfect. Yeah. Too many people take second best. Well, I won't take anything less. It's got to be, yeah, perfect.
The first thing you're aware of is the sheer scale, weight and size of this vehicle. It occupies an awful lot of road space. You've got to be very careful where those near side wheels are on the road. It's made by an individual, and you'd expect the interior to be individualistic. Nevertheless, I wish he'd left a bit more room for your hand between the steering rim and the instrument binnacle. And I have to say, it does feel a bit ponderous. I'd hate to have to throw this around on the road. A brave effort from Martin Harvey, but given the choice, I know which car I'd prefer.
has brought you some big motoring stories in the past, but they don't come any bigger than this.
This is the longest load ever to travel on British roads. It weighs over 500 tonnes. There are 2 and sometimes 3 tractors and 222 wheels, and that doesn't include the spares. It's a gas turbine bound for Didcot Power Station, and it's one of 20 similar loads that's going to be clogging up the roads between Avonmouth and Didcot between now and next June. But with something this big, you can't just plonk it on the back of a transit.
Instead, the Berlin-built turbine is carried on 2 bogies designed to spread weight across the highway. These can be hydraulically raised and lowered to adjust to the camber of the road or to lift the huge frame clear of obstacles. And it's so big, it takes at least 4 people to drive it.
Driver for each tractor, and then a steersman for each of the 2 bogies, and a 3rd person who acts as a lookout and a liaison person with the police.
Now, I don't like to mention it, but what would happen if you had a breakdown?
Normally it's tyre trouble, and because of the numbers of wheels that we have, the pressures are low, so we haven't, and up to date fortunately, we haven't had a lot of tyre trouble. If it's something else, then we're carrying spares with us to do it on the road. Fortunately, it's not happened yet.
So you don't just ring up the AA or the RAC or National Breakdown?
We try to be as self-contained as possible.
But what's it like to drive something as big as a row of houses? Well, the answer is surprisingly easy, as I found out after I clambered into the cab of one of the 2 giant German-built Thorn tractor units. There's 6-wheel drive, 2 automatic gearboxes, and no shortage of power.
No, just ease off, will you? Let us pull it. All right?
I'm not pushing, Mick. You've got to hold, mate.
Okay.
He's not pushing me.
No, you've got to hold.
We're pulling it.
You've got to hold.
Don't tell him to get pushing.
No, it's easy if he doesn't push, but it's
no, a
on
bit
the
more speed. Nice light steering, isn't it? The old power assisted.
Yeah.
How many miles to the gallon will this do when it's going on at the motorway?
About 1 to 1.
1 mile to the gallon? Yeah. I hope you've got big tanks. Now, you sure you don't want me to take it up the M4?
You can do if you want, yeah.
Each unit has a 19.5-litre V12, pushing out a massive 500 horsepower, so there's plenty of torque, but not much speed, which is why 2/3 of the journey takes place at night. The trip is split into 3 to ease congestion, leaving Avonmouth docks at 8 o'clock in the evening and arriving at Lee Delamere services on the M4 at midnight. But even in the middle of the night, there's still a queue of traffic in its wake. But on the Wiltshire section of the M4, safety dictates that the load must travel by day, avoiding the rush hour wherever possible. 3 police forces have been planning this epic journey for over a year, and it falls to Wiltshire Police to coordinate the most complex manoeuvre of all. The turbines were built with the weight restrictions of our roads in mind, though that doesn't mean it's all plain sailing.
Twice along the route, everything comes to a complete standstill as the mammoth load crosses bridges. Here, weight is so critical because of the construction of the bridges that it has to take a special line to cross safely. Too far to the left and the whole caboodle could finish up in the River Avon. In fact, they're testing the bridge for stress now as the load approaches.
Following behind the giant load is a flotilla of smaller vehicles. Their job is to form a rolling roadblock behind the rear tractor to stop anything running into it, as well as filtering traffic into the outside lane. The average speed of this Leviathan is 10 miles an hour, though on hills this can drop to as low as 2 or 3, even with a 3rd tractor unit hooked up to give a total of 1,500 horsepower. There are 16 more of these huge loads to be moved between now and next June, so beware. For this trip, There was a brief stop at Membury, then on to Didcot, on into the night.
Relieves the day when the night relieves the day.
Now I know what you're thinking. I know exactly what you're thinking. Reliant Robin, why? What is he doing here with the plastic pig? You're thinking he's going to take the Michael. He's going to give it a really, really hard time. Well, on this occasion, you would be completely and absolutely wrong. Me and the pig are here to be taken seriously because I'm about to tell the story of the Reliant three-wheeler like it's never been told before. Top Gear is gearing up for a third series of the only show on telly that takes an indulgent look at motoring's more disarming confections. That's right, The Car's the Star is back.
Also in the series, we'll be looking at that favourite of 60s bank managers and bank robbers, the Jaguar Mark II. Not forgetting the corrugated Citroën, the 2CV. I've owned 26 of them. But no Car's the Star would be complete without some transatlantic excess, America's only sports car, the Chevy Corvette. Then there's Ford's redoubtable Cortina in all its numerous guises.
But we need your help. So if you have a tale to tell about any of that lot, get in touch. Maybe you help design them, build them, own them, crash them, or just have an anecdote to relate. We'd like to hear from you. Ring us on 0121 471 2939 or write to us at The Car's the Star, BBC Pebble Mill, Birmingham B5 7QQ. And if you think the pig is ridiculous, here is the sublime, because we're also telling the Morgan story. So it's time to dust off those string-back driving gloves and flat cap and reach for the phone. And that number again is 0121 471 2939. And don't worry, we'll be repeating both the number and the address at the end of the show. Oh, and while I've got your complete and undivided attention, wonderful noise. On a completely unrelated subject, we still need a few more important models on our Top Gear JD Power L registration survey. Your chance to tell the car makers what you think of both their products and their dealers. So if you drive any of the following, ring us and we will send you a questionnaire. It's a free phone number, 0800 44 7700, and we would love to hear from you if you drive any of these registered between August 93 and July 1994. And don't worry, if you've missed that number, you'll be able to note it down when we show it at the end of the programme.
It took 7 years to develop. It's been on the market for 2, yet you've probably never seen one. It's the AC Ace. Jeremy drove it briefly at the launch, and he reckoned he'd rather have a TVR and save himself 20 grand.
But then that's not the market AC you're looking at. To them, this is a prestige British sports car to challenge the likes of Mercedes and Porsche.
The chassis is stainless steel, the bodywork handcrafted aluminium, and the upholstery hand-stitched leather. And these features don't come cheaply.
It's exclusive too. There are only 30 Aces on the road at the moment, and they'll never be common.
Under the bonnet, AC have kept their traditional Ford power. They've taken the 5-litre V8 straight out of the Mustang. It produces a fairly modest 260 horsepower, but with this lightweight chassis, AC claim it can still out-drag a Merc 500 SL from 0 to 60 in just 5.9 seconds.
It's pretty harsh and wheezy at the top end, like most American engines. But a new 4.6-litre with 320 horsepower is on the way next year.
As you'd expect in a £60,000 car, there are quite a few goodies. The hood is power assisted, these sports seats are very comfortable, and to add to the leather trim, there's nice touches of wood and suede. There's an electrically heated screen, there's air conditioning, but things like a CD and an alarm system come as extras. When it comes to ride and handling, AC have got their sums just right. It's not too soft to spoil the corners, but it's not too hard to be uncomfortable on a long journey. And the actual balance of this rear-wheel drive, front-engine sports car is traditional English quality, with very good steering feedback and just that touch of oversteer if you push it a little bit too hard. Right, now that I've had my fun, I suppose, as a dedicated tester for you, the public, I'd better take the roof off and see what it's like. And it's snowing. All right. That's it, 70 miles an hour, it's nice and quiet, there's hardly any buffeting, and it's bloody cold.
I'm afraid, until I can cruise in the sunshine, I can't really say if the Ace is a better pose than a Merc or a Porsche.
However, if you've got the money and you're looking for a very British car with a quality, hand-finished build, then the Ace could be just what you're after. Mind you, for just an extra 10 grand, you could be looking at a real man's AC, a Cobra.
Next week, Steve Berry with the record breakers at Bonneville. The world-beating rally car you can buy in the high street. And whatever you do, don't miss Top Gear Motorsports Review of the Year next Wednesday.